On June 8, 2023, 17-year-old Valerie Tyndall was reported missing by her mother in Rush County, Indiana. What followed was an extensive search for a missing child that ended with the discovery of her murder. Unlike many of our episodes, there's no dramatic fugitive hunt in this one. In fact, the police and the Marshals feel like they know who did it. Still, it took the Rush County Sheriff's, Rushville Police Department, the FBI, and of course the U.S. Marshals to find Valerie, get her killer to confess, and send him to prison. I'm Chris Godsick, and this is Chasing Evil. Let me welcome those who got justice for Valerie Tyndall. Randy Meek and Sean Smallwood are both detectives with the Rush County Sheriff's Office, and Tom Abreu is a senior inspector with the U.S. Marshals Great Lakes Regional Fugitive Task Force. Let's jump right in. Randy, Sean, where are we in Indiana, and what is this community like?
Well, Rush County in itself is a small county. We're a population of 17,000. It's a farming community. We have more farmland by far than homes, and crime here is really low. We have a lot of property crimes, drug crimes, things like that. It's very unusual for us to have a murder case. We do have missing people as time goes, but it's not long-term missing.
Right.
Person is very uncommon for us.
And I should mention for this podcast, we have assembled the entirety of the Rush County detectives.
All two of us.
All of us.
Okay. The whole brain trust.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So we're living in an agricultural community, and on June 8th, 2023, there's a report of a missing girl.
Yes. So on June 8th, the Sheriff's Department received the first report of a possible runaway juvenile, Valerie Tyndall. Valerie lived in Arlington with her family, and we sent a road deputy out who took the initial report for the runaway juvenile. They talked to the parents, friends, neighbors who she worked for, and they entered her into a database, which was a national database, if she was located or her vehicle was located at that time.
And this is where we meet Patrick Scott. He's a neighbor, right?
Yes.
How close does he live to Valerie?
They're next door neighbors. He lives right behind their property.
Right. And he is a guy who is respected and liked in the community and liked by the family.
Yes.
Right. Now I'm going to do a spoiler alert. Patrick Scott murdered Valerie Tyndall. And I'm telling you that now because as we go through this very extensive investigation, I want you to pay attention to how Patrick Scott evades some of the questions, is as helpful as could be, knowing all along where Valerie is and what he's done to her. So after speaking with the neighbors, what was the next thing that the road policeman would have done?
The deputies who took the report, they did a really good job. They spoke to the family and kind of got a rundown of what Valerie's life was like, who her friends were. They went around, talked to some friends and associates that she was connected to, and spoke to Patrick Scott, who she not only was a friend with, but also worked for.
Right.
And during that time, Patrick said that she had not worked the day she left.
Right. Valerie told her dad, I'm leaving to go to work.
Yes, she told her dad that she was leaving to go to work for a little bit, yes.
And the first thing Patrick says is she didn't work that day.
Yes, which was normal, that she would normally not work on a Wednesday.
Uh-huh. Okay, so already he tells a lie.
Yes.
So this is where I also want to, talk about something that you hear on every single TV show. It's a given. We don't really know much about it, but everybody talks about it, and that's the search warrant.
Yes.
And that is something that you need to get information from any private company, any social media platform, any cellular company, anything needs a search warrant. And during this case, you've done well over 50 search warrants.
Yes, we did.
So when we talk about information that we're getting, know that a search warrant has been written and served. So just in brief, what do you need to put in a search warrant to be able to obtain the information you want?
We have to put the facts that we know at the time. So for the search warrant, we have to have probable cause, which is a reasonable belief that crime's been committed, or where we want to search has evidence of the crime that we are investigating. And
now, in this case, though, she's a runaway, so there's not necessarily a crime, right?
There would have been a juvenile offense at that point, and anybody that assisted her, there could have been crimes in Indiana for that as well.
Okay.
And then we put the facts in there of why we're writing him at the time, that we didn't know where she was, her vehicle was missing, and things like that. And we presented that to a judge, and were issued a lot of search warrants, obviously, throughout that.
Chris, before we get going, I'd like to put into perspective that a search warrant is something that officers may typically do we'll just use a rough estimate, say maybe 12 in their entire career.
Wow.
Road deputies. So when we talk about the amount of search warrants that we put into this case alone, it is significant.
Wow. Okay. And that's certainly got to be a first for Rush County.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. How did you approach this? What was the first things that you were going to be investigating to figure out her whereabouts?
Valerie went missing on June 7th, and then June 8th, it was reported to the Rush County Sheriff's Department in the early morning hours. And a deputy went out there and obtained some information from the family of possible associates, friends that she should be connected to, and additionally entered her into a national database if she's ran or her vehicle was ran, because her vehicle was also missing at the time. After a couple days, the road guys had followed up on Valerie and hadn't located her or her vehicle. And on June 10th, they made the determination they were going to file for a silver alert in Indiana.
And so what's a silver alert? Obviously, we are familiar with amber alerts.
So silver alert is for a missing endangered adult or missing endangered child. In this situation here, we did not qualify for an amber alert because there was not an abduction, or we didn't have the belief of an abduction. So therefore, it did not qualify for an amber alert. So that's why we issued a silver alert for a missing endangered child. And on June 12th is when Sean Smallwood, detective, and myself both took the case over at that point and started writing our first of many search warrants were wrote on June 12th and issued on June 13th.
And what'd you explore first?
What was unusual was Valerie's car was missing. And so, it's easier for a person to be missing than it is a car. So we used traffic cameras and were able to determine that day that Valerie had went to Shelbyville, the town next to us. As she said she was going to go to work that day, and it went the direction that would have been work that day. But however, we never could find the car. So we wanted to chase her, I guess, patterns of life. So we did bank accounts and we did her social medias. We obviously knew she was very active on social medias from what the family had told us. And so we did social media to see who all she was communicating with.
Mm-hmm. How many posts does she do a day on the various social media platforms?
Hundreds. In communicating with people, friends and stuff like that, hundreds a day.
Hundreds a day.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a certain age group, that seems to be the norm, right?
Yes, it's definitely the norm now, yes.
Wow. Okay. And you were checking at the bank to see if she had made any withdrawals?
Yes, how much money she had in the account and if there was any money withdrawn from the account that would have aided her in getting away.
Right. Okay. So you're searching around the area for the car.
We're checking associates, friends, ex-boyfriends, checking areas for the car, trying to find it. The family's calling in different things in different areas they think she could possibly be. So we're checking all that in the time while we're waiting on the search warrant to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started receiving our results from the search warrants, the social medias and stuff on June 15th. So 2 days later, we got quick returns on those because we filed them under exigent circumstances.
And what does that mean?
It means that we thought there was an urgency to it, and we asked that the providers provide it to us in a faster turnaround. A lot of times this stuff will take months to come back. And we didn't feel like this was a situation we could wait months.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what the circumstances were at the time, we wanted to find her. So we received her social media back, and when we saw that, that's where we started piecing the case together. She chatted with a whole bunch of people on there. And one of the last photos we saw of her was an over-the-shoulder shot, which would later become crucial in our case and in identifying her. And we were able to make out a road sign behind her that put her at an intersection in Shelbyville, again, the town next to us. So we started getting the information back, and we started getting our phone records and geolocations back. And so we're starting to get a better idea of her movements on June 7th and where all she had been and who she had communicated with that day.
I just want to point out one thing. One of the things that the road deputies did early on was initially ping her phone to try and get a location for that phone. So as soon as those deputies initiated that GPS ping on her phone, nothing came back, and the phone was turned off, and subsequently those pings continued for 48 hours, and nothing came back. So the phone was off and never came back on. And so all of this happened prior to the detectives getting the case and then serving those search warrants. So,
and if she's alive, which we now know that she is not, but and as you're piecing together this puzzle, somebody who lives on social media, what would be the odds that you think that, I mean, you guys have kids of that age, what would be the odds of that somebody would turn off their phone for a long period of time.
Not
Right.
likely.
We saw her social media come back as active as she was, and we saw that there was an end point on her social media. We had a bad feeling of the outcome of this case at that point.
Just by the fact that she stopped using social media.
It's hard to envision. I mean, you think of something you do every day, and you do it religiously, and all of a sudden you just stop it. And then we periodically check that, and it never started back. It's inconceivable to think that a high school girl would have been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we go down this road later in the investigation, but one theory was potentially if she was planning to run away, and that's where this was going, she could have purchased another phone and created alternate accounts. You think a 17-year-old on the run, they don't really have the tools necessary to sustain everything they need to by themselves.
Right.
And so they would have to be in contact with somebody, a friend, sister, family member. So one of the things we did look into was, are the family members or friends being contacted on another account? Are they covering for her
Right.
because she is trying to run away? And I think that was determined pretty early in the investigation based on interviews that was not the case.
Mm-hmm,
Nobody had talked to her since the day she went missing.
Right. And she had money because she worked. She presumably had money in her bank account.
Yes.
So what's going on with Patrick Scott, meanwhile?
So at that point in time, Patrick Scott was not considered a suspect. He had spoke to our deputy that had went out there and seemed to be forthcoming with information. He wasn't nervous. The family was close friends with Patrick. It wasn't just that Valerie worked for Patrick. The entire family was friends with Patrick. And they did not suspect him at the beginning, just like nobody did. So Patrick was not a suspect. He had been cooperative with law enforcement when they had been there, and just, again, no criminal record, successful business. There was never a time that he stood out at the beginning weeks of this case.
Right. Except for that little lie he told in the beginning, and no one really knew that was a lie until later.
Yes, we didn't know. She didn't normally work on Wednesdays, and the guys had been told that. And so him saying she didn't work today fit that narrative of the beginning of that she ran away.
Right.
So it didn't, at that time, obviously wasn't known to be a lie until later.
Right.
So the main social media that we got back was Snapchat on Valerie, and Valerie regularly used Snapchat. And the first thing we were able to do was piece together that day her whereabouts based off GPS, utilizing that social media. And so that helped us kind of get that she had left home and that she had went to Shelbyville. And then at the time we didn't understand why, but her phone ended up coming back to us towards Rushville. And so we were able to start piecing together that where she went that day, but we were also able to start piecing together conversations, which again, she spoke to a lot of people. And in that time, one of the conversations was, as she was talking to a boy, it had turned into an argument. And the conversation was what I would say in general was pretty unusual from the boy. And then on June 7th, the last comment the boy made to her was, "I'm sorry that I hurt you, Val." So we got that back. And so then our mind instantly went, uh-oh, we need to look into this kid. Now we're looking into him, and we believe he's possibly done something to her. So Sean and I went over to his house and ended up meeting with him. He was fairly cooperative with us, let us search his apartment and stuff like that. And as we talked to him, however, he did lie to us a couple times on things he's saying. We knew that he wasn't telling us the truth on it.
What would his motivation be to lie to you if he had nothing to do with a potential runaway or something even worse? What would be his motivation to lie at all?
I have no idea. Sometimes that's just people's natural reaction to the police for whatever reason,
Right.
is to lie to us. But then we had to now check him, and he provided an alibi at the house that he wasn't there at the time. He wasn't even in the state. And utilizing, again, social media and stuff, that we executed more search warrants on him. We were able to determine that was true, that he was not in the state of Indiana at the time of Valerie's disappearance. So we were able to eliminate him. But that, again, put us back 2 or 3 days.
You must just get amped up every time you get a lead that seems like it must go somewhere, and then it doesn't go anywhere, and then it's a letdown.
There was so many areas on this case that describes it to a T, that we would be thinking we're going to get a break. And I remember we talked several times about we just need a little luck. We just need some luck to go our way on this case.
Right.
And yeah, that was definitely talked about several times. So we clear him, and kind of back in the beginning here of all right, so let's piece together her life.
Do you still think it's a runaway, or do you think that potentially it's something else?
At that point, I'm believing that it's something else. We're at the point where she's not communicating with her friends. Nobody's reached out. There's no way financially, unless somebody is financially supporting her.
Right.
We're at least starting to move that direction that this does not look good.
And in her history, has she ever done anything like this before, where she's run away or cut ties?
We end up later receiving information that she had talked about it, but not to my knowledge that she had done this or anything like this before.
I think it's also important to note at various points in this investigation, we start to think possibilities of what could have happened, maybe something nefarious. But in order to do our jobs effectively, we have to keep everything on the table. Mm-hmm. So even though it's starting to seem as though something may have happened to Valerie, the investigation still has to continue as though she may have run away and she may be out on her own accord doing her own thing.
Right.
So that's why with the Silver Alert, it gets to be a mixed bag, because you do get information, but you get a lot of information that's not credible that has to be pursued. And so they're having to get these tips that come in and vet them and then investigate them. And so it's leading them down these avenues where, although she's not on social media and it's bizarre behavior for somebody who's constantly on, when they get a tip that she was cited somewhere, because that has to remain on the table for the investigation, that has to be vetted. Mm-hmm. And so that's getting them pulled in multiple directions as they're trying to gain information from different social media sources or whatever it may be. They're continuing to have to vet these tips that come in.
Right. Did you get any tips from any psychics?
We did.
Yeah,
yes,
I asked that, and it seems like a ridiculous question, but every time I have done a podcast and they've gone out to the public, every single time they've gotten some responses from psychics.
Yes, we did. It was and it was later in it that we were able to eliminate that tip instantly because of what the psychic had said and what we already knew involving her vehicle. So
right.
We didn't have to spend a lot of time on it.
Uh-huh.
So on the geolocations, we were able to use her Snapchat, and she had traveled that day from her residence in Arlington and had went to Shelbyville, which we were able to track all the way through using traffic cameras and her locations. When she got to Shelbyville, she turned around and came right back to Rush County. So that threw us a loop because we couldn't figure out where the car was during that time. Patrick had said that she did not work for him that day. However, based off of her travels, it looked like she was going to an area that Patrick regularly mows and where he parks his equipment. And so the geo coordinates showed that she came back to Rush County and then traveled back towards her residence, but it stopped short of getting all the way to the town of Arlington. The last geolocation we had at that time showed a what I'll call ping in the middle of a cornfield there south of Arlington. And that was later.
So her phone showed a ping that if she had her phone, which she always does, that she was in the middle of a cornfield?
Yes, just out off the roadway in a field, yes.
And this was from Snapchat. So these geolocations usually were associated with sending a photo.
Right.
So when she would utilize her Snapchat to send a photo of something, it would automatically tag a geolocation. And that geolocation pinpointed her position in the cornfield. And one of the odd things that really stuck out about that was there were two pings 30 seconds apart in the exact same location in that cornfield.
And also that cornfield is next to a long grass lane that led back to a pond that was very remote area.
Oh, okay. I see where this might be going a little bit.
So our days then we eventually would put tracking dogs and cadaver dogs out onto that, and we end up searching 100 acres. We dove the pond, and we end up searching 100 acres shortly after.
I mean, this takes time and a tremendous amount of resources, right?
It took it was an all day process, and at that time you're trying to keep things you're doing fairly low key to not attract a whole bunch of attention, especially when we're bringing in that many people. So,
and when you do a pond, are you putting divers in the water?
We put divers in the water and then sonar in the water back there to double check the pond. And we were on the verge of the property owner was excellent. And that's one of the things that, like, our community came together, and we had such good luck with property owners and citizens in our community that if we needed to go on a property, they didn't bat an eye. And the property owner there, I mean, the first thing he said is, if there's any remote chance that my pond has it, I want you to drain it. But we thoroughly checked that area because of those pings being so close and in such a short period of time. We wanted to make sure we eliminated that all the way through.
Right. And what date is that now? How far are we into this?
June 7th is when those pings were. So we had checked the cornfield on foot in that area, the lane and all that stuff. We'd got out where her last geolocations were because it was potential. We thought that her phone could have been tossed out there too, and maybe her phone was out there. So we checked that. After nothing was found there, we went back and researched the geolocations we had received.
And so her vehicle clearly shows her leaving on the 7th. She's in her car, drives to Shelbyville, and then it just disappears.
Right.
No other camera in the state of Indiana picks it up. She never leaves Shelbyville, according to the traffic camera, looking for that vehicle.
Right.
But when they get these geolocates back from Snapchat, it matches the same route of travel that she was going on the traffic cameras. She goes to Shelbyville. The geolocates hit. They ping there. But then it shows them coming back the same route. So she should have hit that same traffic camera.
Right.
But they were looking for her green Honda Accord.
Right.
And that never hit. And that's when Sean decided to look based on those geolocates. And this is something to add too. You know, when you get a return, they're not giving you a map with little pin drops of where they're going.
Right.
They're giving you a number and then lat longs.
Right.
So those have to be plotted. So they are having to plot these with the correct time that pin drop happened.
Right.
And so with that, after they're able to plot all that, they see she's coming back. So he's able to figure out where that camera is located on that road, and then what time, based on when her pings are traveling up that road, what time frame she should be passing it.
And that's when you're checking the cameras for.
And so that's when Sean was searching the cameras and saw another vehicle pass within that window. And again, This is a country road. It's not a ton of traffic. They're not getting hundreds of cars driving within that 2-3 minute time span.
Right.
So they're able to see there's one car that passes during that time. They run the tag. It comes back to, I believe, his Elizabeth Scott.
Mm-hmm.
But in that photo, because it takes a photo from the rear of the vehicle, it shows a blonde female in the passenger seat, not wearing sleeves, matching the photo taken a few minutes earlier of Valerie driving down in her car.
Right.
But in the driver's seat was a male individual with glasses matching the description of Patrick Scott.
Got it.
Well, I'd say that after we located that photograph of the vehicle, we've now realized that we've been lied to. Patrick specifically lied to us about not having any involvement, not being with her. So we definitely now have a different mind shift.
Right. And is it that Patrick Scott lied to you that he did actually help her run away? Or is it that he lied to you and perhaps there's something else much darker lurking?
To be honest, at that time, it could have gone either way. We weren't really sure what was going on. He could have certainly assisted her at that time of just running away, hide the car, which is what it appeared to have happened. The car was missing, so hide the car, and then maybe she goes with someone else, or he helps drop her off to someone else.
Right. I believe her father in one of the interviews said that she was meeting guys on the internet that she did not know and going to meet them.
He did say that in one of them, and was agitated that she was doing so because he said it was dangerous.
Right.
But we were in areas that the mother had said, she's dated somebody. I know they're in this area. You need to check it. We went and checked.
Right. And nothing.
Nothing. We kept coming up empty.
So on June 23rd, we had another wrench thrown in where a Facebook account came live with Valerie's photo. And we had received a tip that somebody was communicating with them, and they believed they were communicating with Valerie.
So does that generate a tremendous amount of excitement, or are you cynical about that at this point?
I mean, I was suspicious. I mean, I had a hard time believing that we went that many days, 16 days there, and Valerie hadn't communicated with anybody, and all of a sudden put a Facebook account up. So I was very suspicious of it. We did receive some of the messages, and as we saw the messages, it was general communication that could have been her. So during that time, as Sean was plotting geopoints that we'd received back, I typed another search warrant for the Facebook account that had came live. And when I got the return back on that, somebody was communicating with one of Valerie's ex-boyfriends. And when you read it, they were answering questions. It was communication that could have been her. And so we went to her mom during that time and showed it to her. And she said, yeah, this is how she communicates. This is how she talks. So there was a moment there where we thought, well, maybe we do have a chance here during that time.
Right.
We had already became suspicious of Patrick because he was the last one we knew with her. So we were actually sitting surveillance on his house as we were reviewing these Facebook messages. So after extensive research of this Facebook account, it was determined not to be Valerie. It was, we ended up tracking it back to an owner in Indianapolis. It ended up being a false account. It was a real person, but a false account.
Right.
And later became deactivated after we...
Was that person associated with Valerie at all?
There was a connection. They were familiar, and it's hard to understand why they did it. We do believe there was a connection to Valerie in past relationships there.
And they knew she was missing and then said, oh, yeah, we're going to just do an account and pretend to be her?
That's what we suspect, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, and it threw us, again, another wrench in
right.
the committee that we had in this one. So
okay.
On June 25th, we were doing surveillance on Patrick Scott. We were following his vehicle to try to figure out some of his habits and where he was going, what he was doing. This particular day was odd behavior, at least it seemed to be. Patrick had returned to his home, parked his work truck and trailer, immediately jumped into a passenger car, and drove straight back to Shelbyville. And so we followed, doing surveillance the best we could. When we got into Shelbyville, his driving behavior became pretty erratic. He was speeding through town. We had multiple vehicles out surveying him at the same time, trying to keep our profiles low and not alert him. At one point, Patrick goes into a neighborhood that's near where he mows. It just was strange because he went into this neighborhood which doesn't have an outlet. Oh. So he drives into this neighborhood and he's being followed, and at this time we believe he may have noticed that we were tailing him.
Is that a classic counter-surveillance technique?
It is. A lot of times when you're surveying someone, if they believe you're following, they will do a circle to try to check for a tail.
Right. And Tom, who was in the Special Forces in the Army and is very familiar with counter-surveillance, were you impressed by that tactic? Is that an advanced tactic?
I wouldn't say it's advanced. I would say if you're looking to draw somebody out, then yeah, going into kind of dead-end alleys or cul-de-sacs could potentially pull a tail out.
So while we're in this neighborhood following Patrick, his driving behavior, it kind of tells us that he knows that we're there.
Right.
So he immediately turns and comes back out of the neighborhood and goes down a county road and goes nowhere. He just immediately starts driving back toward Rush County again. He never stopped. He didn't go to any particular location, which we found out to be really strange. So on the very following day, we decided that we would go and check the area. There was a reason he went to that area. We thought maybe he was taking supplies to her if she's there. If she's in that area somewhere, maybe he's meeting with her.
Right.
Not really sure what's happening, but we had to try to figure out where was he going initially. So we drove back to the area. As we drove around, we noticed that there was a driveway that went into a small apartment complex, which was abnormal because it was in a residential area, and there was this one little apartment complex in there. And so we decided to drive in, check this apartment complex. You couldn't see the parking lot from the road or anything else of that nature. We drive into the parking lot, and as we get in there, we spot the green Honda Accord that belongs to Valerie, the one that's been missing.
Wow. Okay.
So at that point in time, we decided another search warrant, which I don't know what number we're up to today. We write another search warrant to get a GPS to put on that car with our thought process that if the car moves, we'll be able to track where it's going.
Right. So it could still be driven by Valerie or driven by somebody else. We have no idea at this point, but you want to put a tracker on it in case it moves, you'll know. Got it.
The way the vehicle was parked, it was backed into a parking spot, license plate removed, no keys in it. So it was parked in a way to hide it. And then also we spoke to the apartment manager and inquired on who took care of their property, and that's when we learned Patrick Scott was the lawn care company that took care of that apartment.
Okay.
So again, another tie.
So slowly but surely, the onion is starting to peel away on Patrick Scott.
Correct.
Yes.
But so far, he's done a pretty good job of finding a phenomenal place to hide that car.
That was a good spot. He knew where he was familiar with the area. There were other vehicles parked in that parking lot that were broken, not running, also parked. So he put it right in between them. Huge high bushes up on you could not see from the back of the car at all.
Right.
So it was a good spot.
Okay. Time to talk to Patrick again, and you sent one of your patrol guys over to talk to Patrick. And we have the body cam footage from that interaction, which we're going to play now and get your reaction.
Hey, Patrick, how you doing? All right. Hey, just so happy I just run into you here. I was at your house earlier.
Well, they said you was.
Trying to make contact with you, see what's going on and everything. We're just kind of doing some follow-up stuff real quick on this runaway.
Okay.
You know, with Valerie. When was the last time you heard from her?
Tuesday before she took off.
Tuesday before she took off. And you ain't seen or heard from her since?
Nope.
You don't have any idea where she may be staying or anything, or who she may be with, or where?
I've thought a million things.
Yeah. Have you seen the car anywhere?
Nope. We've
No.
looked at that. We have turned around on a couple of them.
Yeah, that's crazy, because here's the deal. We found the car. Where were you at?
On my way home.
Was she with you then? Who was in the car with you at that point?
Huh?
Who was in the car with you? You weren't by you was in the red Ford Taurus, right?
Yes.
Who was with you?
She was. She met up with a fella and took off.
What was this guy's name?
I don't know.
What was he driving?
It was just a little blue car. That's all I can tell you.
Little blue car. Which way did they go?
Towards Rushville.
Towards Rushville. Okay? That's not what our phone's telling us.
Okay.
Phone tells us she went on back on north towards Arlington from Homer. Right about the same time you would have been going.
Yeah, I went back home. I had to change clothes. I had to change my shirt because I had chemicals all over it.
You dropped her off some guy with a little blue car. That's the truth.
That's the truth.
Okay, we're going to stop it there. He has answers for everything. He's lying. But when you saw this body cam footage, what was your impression of Patrick Scott at that point? I mean, you caught him pretty red-handed, and he's not buckling. He's, in fact, offering a different version right off the top of his head, right?
Yeah, I mean, he is. He obviously got caught in a lie, so we now know that he's capable of lying, but he does have an answer for everything you ask him at that point. And he's not thinking about it. He's not taking any time to think about it. He's just answering it as it goes.
So he seems pretty credible.
Yes.
Sean, was that your impression?
It is, except we know that he isn't.
Right.
At this point, we know he's not credible.
But of the two of you, I'm told you're the people person.
I am the people person, correct.
You're the one who gets hugs from just general members of the public.
Yes, I do.
And they steer clear of Randy.
Yes, that
Okay.
must be, I don't know what it is.
I heard that yesterday from his wife, so I know that to be true. So how did he strike you?
If you walked up to him anywhere on any day, you would think that this guy is a decent human being. You wouldn't suspect him. I mean, certainly not of what we know now. You wouldn't suspect him of this. He appeared to be well liked by everyone that met him. I mean, I would, if I didn't know him, he'd be the kind of person I wouldn't mind sitting down and having breakfast or lunch with.
Right.
He's very likable. And he seems to be truthful with what he says, except that we know now for a fact he's not. That's the hard part right there.
And Tom, even though you hadn't come in yet, how did he strike you in this body cam?
Yeah, so watching this again after everything that we know, it's interesting to watch. But originally when I saw it, you see a guy who's cooperating. You can tell he lied and he's trying his best now, it seems like, to give all the information. But knowing what we know now, you can definitely see some hesitancy in his responses.
Right. But he's offering a completely new narrative, right?
Right.
And that's hard to do off the cuff.
Absolutely. And that's something that we kept going back to in this investigation was how easily he's able to manipulate facts and generally just lie to us.
Right.
And everybody involved in this.
And this is what's called a non-custodial interview, because I pay attention. And it's supposed to be a little bit more friendly. But then later that day, he comes down to the sheriff's office and you guys do a custodial interview, which is a little bit more tense. In that kind of interview, I can't remember, was he read his rights?
Yes.
He was.
So he's Mirandized when you come in for a custodial interview.
Yes.
That's the anything can and will be used against you in the court of law.
Yeah, because at this point he had committed a crime no matter what. He had provided false information in the investigation. He was already committed a crime, so we were going to consider charging him at that point.
Right. Now the spotlight becomes focused on him.
Yes.
So after he did this non-custodial interview in this parking lot, he came down to the sheriff's department to do this custodial interview in which he was Mirandized, and he didn't say anything in those interviews that he hadn't already said before.
There was nothing earth-shattering
Right.
in any of those interviews.
Okay. But he's lied to you guys. He's probably one of the last people that you can tie to Valerie the last time she was seen, right?
He was the last person we knew of
Right.
to be with, yes.
Right. So now he is like dead to right in your target area, so to speak. I don't know. Tom could say that better. Sniper scope, crosshairs, whatever. I just really messed that up.
In the crosshairs.
So in the crosshairs. Yeah, there we go. That's better.
At this point in time now, he's the full-blown suspect, and we're going to proceed to dissect his life.
And what does that mean?
First thing we did was we put a GPS on the car to see if it moved, if he moved it, or if she came back and moved it.
This is on Valerie's car.
On Valerie's car, yes. Mm-hmm. And we left it there, and it was an investigative strategy not to tell anybody that we had the car. We did it. We were able to eliminate a lot of tips that we were getting at that time, and if the car was going to move or anything like that, we would have known it. So we left that car set, put the GPS on it, and then we began dissecting his life in regards to if there was something that we thought could potentially contain evidence. We typed a search warrant for it, which included his truck, his trailer, his wife's vehicle, his kids' vehicles.
And each one of these is a different search warrant.
Every one of them were different, yes. Mm-hmm. He owned 2 properties in Arlington. We typed search warrants for those. Electronics, if you could think it, we typed search warrants. And then that started what kind of became the next 2-3 months of our lives, where we spent a lot of time with Patrick Scott. We were searching for such things as Valerie's license plate, Valerie's keys, Valerie's cell phone, anything that could connect him to Valerie that gives us evidence of something other than just her running away. We went through electronic devices at the scene and stuff like that. And like I said, we searched all his properties and nothing. We didn't find any license plate. We didn't find any keys. We didn't find anything additional in those initial searches to connect us back to Valerie, other than what he was telling us in the statement.
So Patrick Scott is still pretty calm, cool, and collected because you've not cracked the case at all. So he's still free and clear.
Yes, and part of what we did was, and I thought it was crucial towards the end, especially, was we learned his pattern of life. We had Patrick didn't know it, but we put GPS on his vehicles, which were, of course, search warrants, additional search warrants to type, and we started doing surveillance on him and learning his pattern of life.
Right.
And Patrick's a super organized guy that does the same thing every day the same way. That really helped us in the investigation as we went on to learn that we were in this investigation looking for changes of his pattern of life based off of all those search warrants we had done prior, what was different on those days.
Right.
So,
and who else lived at his residence?
So he lived there with his wife, his daughter, his adult daughter, and then he had a grandson that lived with them at the residence. We finished the search warrants. Don't find anything at that point in time connecting us to Patrick Scott. But again, we're still on his tail. We got the GPS. Now we go back to the office and we start analyzing the large amount of data that had came in from all the social medias that we had done and phone records we had done. And that's one of the things we learned on this case was that there was so much data that came in, and the analyzing it hit a point of frustration to us. So when we were executing the search warrants on his house, one of the things he didn't have there was his truck and trailer. And when we asked him about that, he said it was in Shelbyville. So we said, well, no problem. We'll drive you over to it. So we drove Patrick over there, and we get to where he parks it, and there's no truck or trailer there. And at that point, Patrick tells us that his son probably has it and is probably out mowing, and said his son worked for him. So he gives us the locations of where this could be, and says he can't reach him on the phone because he's mowing. He tried right in front of us. And the locations he gives ends up being in one in Rush County, one in Franklin County, one in Shelby County, and they were all remote. So we ended up that night driving to all these. He put us all over the place. We drove to all of them, never could find the truck and trailer, which led to us getting another search warrant for the truck and trailer 2 days later and stopping it in Shelbyville on a traffic stop and conducting the search warrant on it there. Again, for the license plates, the keys, the phone, anything to connect Valerie to it. And again, this time here we came up with nothing. Later, after talking to his son and other people connected, we learned that that is false, that his son did not work for him, that Patrick just didn't want us to have the truck and trailer that day for whatever reason.
What possible reason could you come up with of why he wouldn't want you to have it?
It's something we don't know. He had unique moments like that right there, which made no sense to us. Why?
We could guess and say that we think that the license plate probably was in the truck at that time. We can say that, but we don't know that for sure.
Right.
During that time, I had a meeting with another organization, and they brought it to our attention that the U.S. Marshals do missing kids, it was something we were not familiar with. And again, at that point, to be honest, we were pretty frustrated because we were getting a lot of people offering help, but it wasn't actually help. It was they just wanted to be involved, but they weren't providing any assistance. So we were frustrated at that time anyway. And I remember I said, "What are the U.S. Marshals going to provide us here? I don't just need another person coming in here saying they want the information. What are they going to do to help us?" So they provided me Tom's email, and I remember my first email to Tom was basically, "What are you going to actually provide me?"
Right.
So that was my first interaction with Tom, and again, it was a moment of frustration, and I had never met Tom until then, and later, Tom of course came into the case.
So Tom, what do the Marshals bring to the case?
That's a good question, Chris. And that was a good question from Randy. And I remember getting the email. I think I was at training at the time, and I saw it, and it was worded exactly that way. What can you provide us?
Right.
And basically, I reached out to him, and I said, it's going to be a unique thing per case. We look at every case independently. And really what we provide is an investigator to assist you with your case. So I told him I couldn't really, not knowing any of the details, really give him a direct answer to that question. Right. But I said I'd be happy to look at what you have, and based on that, I can kind of provide you with an idea of where we can help you in this investigation. So the case was initially described to me in that email was a 17-year-old runaway.
Right.
So when I asked him for any case notes or anything, I honestly was not expecting a lot. What I got in return was a 25-page report that detailed everything that he's been discussing.
Right.
As good investigators, you have to leave everything on the table, right? So this does look very bad because this is a girl who's on social media all the time, talking to her friends every single day. She had a very close relationship with her sister, and all of a sudden goes dark. And then we find out that there's a 57-year-old man who is now involved in this. And so initially what you start to think is there the potential that maybe there was some grooming involved here? Did Patrick groom her and potentially develop a sexual relationship with her?
Right.
And what turns this now? Because when you see that this girl's no longer communicating with anybody, your mind starts to drift in that direction. Is she still alive?
Right.
And so that becomes an avenue that you have to start looking down. What is the motive here for Patrick to potentially get rid of Valerie? So I read through the report, 25 pages, multiple times, sat there with a highlighter, highlighting different things, writing down questions. And I think that night responded to Randy and said, I'd be happy to help. And I told him, I don't know exactly at this moment what it is I can provide you other than an extra set of eyes to look at this information for you. So I came down, I brought two other seasoned investigators with me to make sure that we touched on all the bases, hit everything we needed to. And we met with Randy and his team. I said, this seems like there's potential for some kind of a relationship, potentially a sexual relationship between the two of them. And maybe something got out of hand. She was going to come forward with it, something. and there's a potential that he may have killed her.
Right.
And at the time, Randy agreed that was a potential, but one of the things that he said was, wait till you talk to Patrick Scott.
Right.
Because his demeanor, and he's been incredibly helpful or forthcoming with information, and he's always been cooperative during the entire course of the investigation. Obviously, he lied in the beginning, but then after that was still cooperating with them. So I told him what I wanted to do was kind of start from the beginning, because they'd been working this case for 2 months at that point. So I asked him if it was all right if we went and started at the beginning, interviewed the family, interviewed the friends. And then I also asked him...
That does seem to be a Marshals tactic from everybody I've spoken to, that when you come into a case, you start at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to get involved in this in a personal level and really understand all the players, understand everything that's happening, right? So as an agency, we're very good at finding people. The reason why we're good at that is we're able to understand and navigate this human terrain, right? Understand how people think, what drives them. If you are going to hide or do something nefarious, what's the reasoning and intent behind that? Mm-hmm. You only get that in having one-on-one conversations with people. You get to know them. I can read a report all day long, but I'm not understanding the emotion behind that. How is that person talking to you, right? And in having that one-on-one conversation, especially you go to a small town, everybody knows the police, and they may not be as forthcoming because maybe they've had an involvement with them on a previous case and they don't like them.
Right.
Or there's something there. It's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. And so maybe coming from the outside, and then also, being able to say we're with the U.S. Marshals, it's a federal agency. This is bigger than just Rush County.
Right.
That sometimes people are more forthcoming with information when we go talk to them.
How much do you think of it is attributable to the beard?
All of it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
So Randy said, absolutely, do what you need to with the case. I had him send me all the data that they had gotten from their search warrants, and I also had him send me the search warrants that they submitted as well.
Right.
And the reason for that, a lot of these companies, when you send a search warrant in, they will give you what you ask.
Right.
And nothing more.
Right.
And so sometimes the more specific you are in your language, the more that they'll give. And then just started over, and from June 7th, what happened? So we talked to the entire family, we talked to friends, and really started kind of developing that picture of what happened to Valerie. And not only what happened to Valerie, but who Valerie was. Is this something that would fit the norm for her behavior? Mm-hmm. And what we got right away was it did not. She had one main friend who was her best friend, the person she always communicated with, and then she was very close with her sisters. So we knew if Valerie is still out there, she's not going to be out there and not talking to somebody. Mm-hmm. So it was likely it had to be either her friend or her sisters. So we wanted to kind of target those people to see whether or not they're assisting in keeping her hidden.
Right.
So we spoke to numerous people, different friends, and the conclusion that we got was the same that Rush County had gotten, where nobody has been in contact with her. Nobody has heard from her.
Right.
Everyone that we spoke to was genuinely worried about her because this did not fit her norm. Mm-hmm. And so establishing that baseline, we knew it was highly unlikely that she was gone and running away on her own. Again, that stayed on the table because I had no evidence telling me that that was not the case, but it just seemed highly unlikely.
Right.
And so at that point, the two avenues that the investigation went down were that either Valerie was deceased or she was being held against her will and unable to communicate. Uh-huh. Those were the only two things that at the time seemed to make sense as to why she was communicating on social media so much, talked to her friends every single day, and then had completely gone dark.
Right.
It didn't fit her normal pattern. So one of the things that we did was have Randy resubmit those search warrants. One of the things that was interesting that we had submitted for was Patrick Scott's phone, and in particular the phone calls he made. And we were able to determine that on the day that they served the search warrants on Patrick Scott's property and to look for the vehicle where he said he had called Ryan, his son, no phone calls were actually made that day to Ryan. So again, that was another lie that we were able to catch him in. One of the other big things that stuck out to me when I was reading the notes At one point, I think one of the road officers had gone to speak to Patrick. They asked him if he had seen her. He said no, she didn't work that day. But he volunteered a critical piece of information that had gone unused to this point. And that was, he said he had a Live 360 app on her phone where he could track her whereabouts through her phone's GPS. Mm-hmm. And he knew that she was back home, according to that application. She was back home at 12:21 that day on the 7th.
Right.
And I think initially investigators kind of took that as like, okay, well.
I just want to put a pin in that for 1 second and go, okay, guys, how creepy is it that your next door neighbor has a live 360
absolutely.
On 16, 17-year-old's phone?
And I think his reasoning behind it was she mows for him.
Right.
And so if she's off somewhere mowing, he wants to be able to track where she's mowing, which later we discover is completely false.
See, I bought that. When I first heard that, I'm like, yeah, actually, that
right. It's an employee of yours.
Right.
They have a $2,000 lawnmower.
Sure.
Right. Later we find out that's nonsense.
Right. And then there was an event, I guess, where he utilized the app when she wasn't at school.
What we found out was that he had actually called the school and asked them if she was in school that day because he felt like she was lying to him about where she was at on that day.
And the 360 showed she wasn't at school. Yeah. Right. So this slowly but surely does start to indicate something other than an employee or normal mentor relationship. You know, it does give you a little bit of a creep factor, no?
Kind of a jealousy. Maybe there was some jealousy there.
There was a very strange relationship there. It wasn't a normal relationship for a teenage girl and a 57-year-old man.
Who had his own kid.
Correct. 2 kids.
Right.
We get stories from the family as well. One in particular was Patrick had taken Valerie out to dinner with his family, which he did on occasion.
Okay.
And apparently some boy tried to show up to take Valerie somewhere or to go. Valerie had called them to meet up.
Right.
And that had gotten Patrick very upset. And Patrick called Valerie's parents to discuss it. And he had said he had gotten rid of the boy and told him to leave. But he was very upset that that had happened. And so it was almost like a possessive, like she's not allowed to have any other men in her life.
Right.
So with that Live 360 app, one of the things that I asked Randy initially was that something that a search warrant had been written for? Because if he's able to track her location, then that location information is available. And so what we ended up doing was we discussed it, and Rush County wrote a search warrant for that information to collect any GPS information from either of their phones.
Right.
And I think it was a couple weeks later we ended up getting that return with all the GPS information. Initially, we were interested to see what Valerie's phone had because we were hoping it had tracked her phone for the entire period that day. Mm-hmm. But what we ended up getting was she had turned that app off, I believe, a couple months prior.
Oh.
So on the day she went missing, it had been turned off or deleted, and there was no data.
Mm-hmm.
What we found out with Patrick Scott with his phone was he had left the application running the whole time.
Wow. Bonus.
And so we were able to really set up a mapping system with all of his location history. Mm-hmm. And so what we ended up with was an interactive map that really just showed breadcrumbs of everywhere Scott had been.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he had turned the phone on and off here and there, and there was no data available during those periods of time. So the Life 360 data showed them passing where the last Snapchat geolocation pings had hit in that cornfield and continuing. And they end up stopping at Patrick Scott's house. So at that point, we know Patrick Scott never stopped in Homer. So the idea from his initial story where he dropped her off and continued, so there was no way she went home with him. Mm-hmm. We knew that was false.
Right.
There was no way that she could have stopped.
Right.
Or that vehicle could have stopped. They were traveling at a regular rate of speed, passing the location where he said the exchange happened, where he dropped her off, she got another car, and they went their separate ways. So that information was able to show us that that was another lie that Patrick had told us.
Right.
And that, in fact, Patrick had gone from Shelbyville back to his house without making any deviations or stops. So at that point, we knew Patrick is lying to us, and Valerie's last location was likely at his home.
Okay.
So
that's a major development.
It's a pretty big development because that gives us another location that had been searched, but that we needed to hone in on.
Right.
Because we had searched it looking for evidence related to Valerie's vehicle, but there was a potential for other evidence to be there that probably needed to be taken.
Right.
And that is when we ended up having the discussion about writing a search warrant for all of Patrick's electronic devices. Now, I had seen that search warrants were written for his phone, and I spoke to Randy about it, and they had just done a physical search of the phone. Patrick had given it up, and they searched through the phone to see if there was any...
Patrick gave it up when he didn't have to?
No, they had a search warrant.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't give it up, but he handed it over.
Right.
And a physical search was done. I had discussed with Randy was the potential that there was hidden information or information that was potentially deleted. And so a physical search wouldn't yield that information because if he has applications hiding pictures or hiding text messages, those applications may not have been searched during a physical search, as well as if he had been having a conversation through SMS or texting and decided to go back and individually delete all those, there would be no record of it just through a physical search. And so in discussing writing the search warrant for the phone to do a data dump of all the information on the phone, we decided we might as well do it for all the electronics in the house.
Right.
And so because they had served a search warrant at the house, they knew that there were other laptops and electronic devices at the home. And none of those had been searched in any way.
Right.
And because, you see enough of these crimes, usually people have to Google search how to do something. And so there was a potential for Google searches and a history in his computer, or even if they were involved in a sexual relationship, messages being sent back and forth, emails being sent, or potentially photos between the two of them. So what we wanted to do was have search warrants written again for Patrick Scott's electronic devices so that we could submit those for a forensic examination and to have all the information in them extracted.
Right.
Rush County submitted multiple search warrants asking for forensic examination of all the electronic devices that Patrick Scott had in his possession.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to point out about Patrick Scott, too, which was something we had to deal with this entire investigation, he claims to be hard of hearing.
Right.
And he will ask you to repeat a question multiple times. But one thing you'll notice in a lot of the body cam videos, if you're just talking to him about everyday stuff, he's got no problem hearing you. And he will answer your question immediately. And the second that you ask a difficult question pertaining to Valerie or this investigation, he asks you to repeat it because he can't hear. And it started to seem like this was a tactic he was using to give himself a second to come up with an answer.
Right.
Because then you would repeat it loudly and he would be able to provide you with an answer, but it wasn't a full answer.
Right.
And so you'd have to clarify the question again. And it was almost like he was biding time to really come up with a good answer.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to mention is throughout the interviews we had with family, it was brought to our attention that Valerie had multiple phones. Mm-hmm. So she had burner phones that her parents were unaware of until after she had left. And so we started to believe that maybe Patrick was providing her with these phones and maybe their communication wasn't on his main phone, but maybe they had a series of burner phones.
Right. And was there any evidence whatsoever that even anything hinting at a sexual relationship?
Well, so none of the data that we had at that point did. But again, we had just stopped him to get these devices to take the data.
Right.
And so, of course, that takes some time. Now, Patrick's house is interesting. So it's a single-family structure, but when you enter his house, there's a room. Now, it had been searched during the initial search when they were looking for the keys, but it's locked, and no one has access to it except Patrick. It's a very small room. And inside of that room, he has a TV, and on the TV is his series of security cameras. He has a lot of security cameras around his property. And I remember one of the first questions I asked Randy when I got on the investigation was, is he a tech-savvy guy? And I think their answer was initially no.
Right.
He doesn't appear to be. As this investigation progressed, we found that was not the case.
And I'm sorry to say that's where we're going to have to leave this episode. Even though Rush County and the Marshals are getting closer, there's still a lot more to go in this investigation. So let me thank Senior Inspector Tom Abreu from the U.S. Marshals Great Lakes Regional Fugitive Task Force and Detectives Randy Meek and Sean Smallwood of the Rush County Sheriff's Office. And if you have a moment, this is the part I ask you to please go to Apple or Spotify and give us a 5-star rating and write a glowing review. And, of course, tell your friends about us. It's pretty unusual to have a podcast where you're hearing from the people in law enforcement who are at the tip of the spear. We're just trying to grow this thing so we could really use your help. So thanks very much in advance. And finally, Chasing Evil is produced with the cooperation of the U.S. Marshals Service. It contains interviews with current and retired employees as well as other persons. Opinions, positions, and views expressed by any of them may not reflect the official views, positions, or policies of the United States Marshals Service. Stay safe, everyone.